Hi, this is David Baumblatt from Terabant Leadership. Today we're going to be talking about the Chinese New Year. This is the year of the horse. In Chinese, they would say 新年快乐, which is 新年马年, excuse me. But what we're going to do is, we're going to talk from a perspective of the China's New Year, and how that's reflecting to the bigger world. Let me go through some news. Should have brought some water. Let's go through some news today, what's going on. Pretty interesting. What you see here is when you think about where America's going. I'm going to take this 1 second. I'm going to get something to drink 1 second. Thanks for hanging in there. So anyway, let's take a look at this and look better. What's happening here? Again, this is just in the news. You don't think this is something that's happening in the West, not happening in China, by the way. We're being invaded. Let's go to the next one. Again, we're just looking at quick news here first. This is Ambassador Mike Walls with his buddy, Kash Patel. And what did I say to Mikey? You know, these guys know about me. But again, what we're talking about is the Chinese New Year, how it's growing and becoming stronger. And where are we coming in America? This gets to the final one. 1 second. Let's go to the one more thing here. I thought this one tab goes really quick. So the part is, it says this person saw me. It's probably some asshole here. Knocked you down on spam. So I'm listed on spam on X. So I'm listed on spam on X. And what does that mean? To a military veteran, you censor me, you put me on spam. And what does that take us? Take us to the last slide here. Now this is in Europe. This is a slide that's telling, in Europe, would the people in Europe, would they fight for the freedoms of the other people? As you can see, not too much. I think as you go more toward, as you see more toward Eastern Europe, the percentage higher. That's not a surprise at all. Look at Germany. That's not a surprise at all. And what did I write here? What are they doing in America? What did I keep saying? Hopefully that's it. We'll get to the Chinese New Year, but what did I keep saying about America? A great litmus test to test in America is, as the patriotism goes lower and lower, and for obvious reasons, do you think white men in particular are going to stand up, fight, and die for America? Probably not. But anyway, so let's talk a little about the Chinese New Year. So let's just do a video here quick. Let me explain, so this hopefully explains a little bit what's going on in the Chinese New Year. Let me add this up. Oh, can people hear that? Yeah, I don't think that's it's weird. The video was going before. Let me put this other thing up here and just see how this works. So again, just so you know, for the Chinese New Year, it's a big event. It's bigger. You can say it's their version of Christmas, but it's much bigger. And you could tell every year that's going on, you could tell the country is celebrating more and more. Its prosperity comes together. So this is just some of the view, but talk about the technology that's happening in China. Let's just take a quick view of that. Does anyone not think that one day these robots are not only going to be used in war, but in civilian terms to kill people? You really, like I said, the Terminator movies, you kind of see this is coming. I find this pretty amazing, because the way these robots are moving more and more, you're seeing them. It's truly going to become mainstream on how we're using these robots, for the good and for the bad. Oh, that's enough. What I'm trying to show you is the amount of technology that's moving in China is unbelievable. Let's just do this click and then I'll comment again on China.
So we're getting to a place now where there's only one adversary, and I think it's time to just call it out: China. That's it. And so you either are with us, so to speak, against China, or you're not, because China is getting ready for world dominance. And I call it what it is. Economically,
I don't know about world dominance. I mean, so America's world dominance. Well, let him finish. But what's interesting is I came to be with China, sort of seeing it from a strategic view as I'm not saying it's going to be a superpower. I never believed that, but it will be. The world is going to become multipolar. It will become a regional power, like it or not. But it's interesting where these people are now finally seeing it. The only reason they care now, it's affecting their money. These are the globalist capitalists.
militarily, AI, power, you name it, those guys are not fooling around. And if we don't wake up,
No, it's true. China is not fooling around. We, on the other hand, are fooling around. But we'll finish this, what he says.
and get together on this, they will be the superpower. Now, if you're okay with that, and you want to live in that kind of a world, well, I don't. So I'd like to see this thing worked out pretty damn fast, because Europe has to get on board, Canada has to get on board, everybody that believes in democracy, freedom, and
Oh, yeah, democracy and freedom. Yeah, that's what we have in America.
capitalism has to get on board, or you will see those guys walk into your country one day.
Interesting. Let me push this thing here. We'll see them walking to our country one day. I don't know. Don't we already have them in our country one day? Kevin O'Leary. I don't know. You're going to join the military, Kevin O'Leary? You're going to kill him? What you're finding out is this. These people never had a problem with China before. And who's they? These would be the American capitalists, the globalists. Why? Because they were making so much money off China. So it was basically just think of a typical business deal. The American corporations would do a business in China. The American corporations initially, they had the edge. So they were making, you could say, higher profit margins. As time goes on and China becomes more powerful, guess what happens to those profit margins? It gets shifted more in China because China has power. So the point being is these global capitalists, they don't care about our freedom. Never did. What's happening is China is eating into their wallets, not necessarily the wallets of the working man in America. I've said this many times about legal immigration, but now you're starting to see this. And then I would look at Kevin O'Leary. Okay, so what do you want to do? You want to go? You want to do a war? All right, you sign up. Let's do a draft. But you're seeing the video that I did before, the slide where more and more European men, they're not willing to fight and die for this society. Same thing in America. I don't know, Kevin O'Leary. So if we're going to defeat China, now we're going to get our First Amendment back. Just what you're starting to see is you're starting to see more and more American corporations get pissed off at China because they're not making as much money as they had before. They don't care about the workers. Let me try to see this again if this gets to the stage here. I don't know why this is not happening. It's interesting. Yeah, I'm trying to put this thing on stage. Don't know. All right. Let me, 1 second. Let me take this out. All right, let me just remove this. Let me bring it up here.
System, attempting something we haven't seen in modern history. So what's really going on here? Well, this is a massive strategic shift in how money actually works. At the heart of it, China is linking its currency directly to gold.
Okay, so again, we're just doing a quick video on the gold here. What you're seeing is I keep saying in America, we're just a corporation. It really is. The only thing that really moves our levers in America is money. There's really nothing else. Even our support for the military is a joke. The people serving in the military, they're just doing it for money. We're not a Christian nation. We're not really kumbaya Americans, thanks to so much diversity. We don't even know who each other is. So you got to ask yourself, what is holding us together? And I've said many times, picture people working in a globalist corporation. You know, and it is true, people from all walks, like Coca-Cola. Like, how do people all work in this corporation called Coca-Cola? People probably work there, don't even care about Coca-Cola. There's probably people working there who don't even want to drink Coca-Cola. It's bad for them. People in Coca-Cola don't even like their coworkers. I'm just using Coca-Cola as an example, as a typical corporation. So why do they go to work? Why are they still able to do what they've got to do? It's for a paycheck. So once the money train starts ending in America, this is done. Now you might say, yeah, David, but isn't that a lot of countries about economic? Not as much. You'd be surprised. There is another value. Like even America, wouldn't maybe we've come together? Like think about it. Why did our military veterans, we'll say World War II, which I think they would regret now, why did they volunteer to be drafted? Do you really think they did it for monetary reasons? Do you really think they were afraid that if they didn't go to the draft, they would be sent to jail? It wasn't. Why did I go to West Point? Why did I serve in the military? It wasn't for the money. I mean, I love, so there are things I'm not, because you hear this from the liberals a lot, like this, like kumbaya society, and I get it. A lot of it just sounds very strange. But even if you're on the right, you should have a sense of principles and morals that you're teaching your children. I mean, that's the only thing that our driving force is sex and money and drugs. I mean, we have no principles other than that. So I keep saying, I mean, what about the people who volunteered to fight in Vietnam, these drafting, or just the people who truly volunteered to serve in the military, not for the money? So we know it. There are societies, there are people, there are certain cultures where no, there are other principles besides the money. Not in America anymore. It really is. And so as this economic train starts coming to a halt in America, you're going to see violence like you've never seen before.
To challenge the US dollar. And they're not messing around. The People's Bank of China has become the biggest official gold buyer, period. So why the huge push now? Well, it all kicked into high gear after one event shattered global trust. Back in 2022, the US froze over $300 billion of Russia's foreign reserves. Just gone. And that sent a shockwave around the world. Suddenly, your dollar assets could just disappear. The result? Countries started selling off US debt and buying physical gold to protect themselves. This is where China's plan gets really clever. It solves the two biggest problems nations had with its currency. The goal is to make gold the ultimate form of collateral, a status pretty much only held by US.
I mean, think about it right now. What is your view on the US dollar versus gold? We know it. We all see it. I mean, the American empire is falling. And Donald Trump even mentioned this correctly so. He's like, if the US dollar loses its world reserve currency status, which it will. He said it's like losing one of the worst wars or significant war. He's right. It's going to happen. You're going to see it.
Financial system, attempting something by US treasuries. Okay, problem number one was trust. No one wanted China holding their gold bars, so China came up with a fix. They created the Gold Corridor. It's a network of vaults that lets countries hold their own gold securely.
So they're talking about the BRICS here, and we keep saying much of the BRICS unit currency will be backed by gold. And why is that? Is like I said, and it's happening, the Chinese yuan is growing in significance. You may not know about it, you may not trust it, but world banks are increasing their supply of the Chinese renminbi. But it's still the Chinese renminbi versus the US dollar. But there's something else that's always been around. It's called gold. And China knows it. People trust gold more than the Chinese renminbi, of course, but now even more than the US dollar. So that's why they're pushing. They're not trying to do it to sink America or anything. What they're trying to do is become independent. They don't want to be linked anymore and be dependent on the US dollar. But they also know that their reserve currency, the Chinese renminbi, it's not strong enough. It's growing. It's definitely growing. There's no doubt about it. But it's going back to the basics. And what is that? Gold.
But there was another problem. Gold's price jumps all over the place. You can't base trade on that. Their solution? They use a 200-day average price. It smooths out the volatility, making it stable for loans. And this is a total game changer, especially for developing nations in places like Africa. Now they can use their own gold as collateral to fund their own growth, completely outside the dollar system. So you have to be wondering, is the United States just sitting back and watching all this happen? Not at all. In a fascinating move, the US quietly started bringing its own gold back home. And why would they do that? Because in this new game, physical possession of gold is everything.
Yeah, I think you're also going to see Europe, a lot of European countries, to include Germany, hold a significant portion of their gold in America. I think that's going to change too. I don't blame them. I think Europe is going to ask for their gold back as well.
What we're seeing is the start of a world with two very different, competing ideas of what money is. You've got China's physical, gold-backed system on one side and a digital, tech-backed system from the West. So, the ultimate question is, what will we choose to try?
Well, we'll see. Let's go on this too. Since we're talking about some gold.
Even though the markets are closed for President's Day, as you can see, Dow is up by 180, S&P by 23 and change, NASDAQ up 55 and change. So the markets are closed for President's Day. All eyes, though, on some macro data we've got coming out. We're going to get the January Fed minutes Wednesday. The December PCE is facing shortages, rising costs, squeezed margins. I want to bring in TJM Institutional Services Director James Yorio. James, market sentiment has certainly been shifting
efficiently and elegantly, and it hasn't disrupted things
I wanted to get to the part they were specifically talking about a certain part. 1 second.
too much, because I think the fact that it was so blockbuster.
All right. Let's talk about the markets really quick here with you for gold and silver, because we've seen a big pullback in both. So right now you've got gold at 5,000, just above 5,000. Investors have been looking at the outlook for U.S. interest rates. You've got the softer inflation data that we saw on Friday. Gold up 14% year to date. Silver is the story here, down roughly 1%. James, what is your outlook right now? In particular, this silver trade, I think, is fascinating.
Basically, all this is I'm telling you, the gold and silver, they'll take a dip. They're still going up. Gold and silver will still go up. Give it time. We're going to do something else, too. Also, I want to do, before we get to this clip about China and the rise, I also want to show this clip. I thought it's pretty interesting. So you probably know him. I don't know these people. These are Americans. So during the Chinese New Year, the Chinese government will invite celebrities and singers from the West, well known, and they will come and perform in front of China. And in one ways, I don't have a problem. Like the American government will look bad upon these people as traitors. As long as you support fascism, it's not communism anymore, it's fine. But the point being is what you'll get is a lot of these Americans, even from the right, they'll preach they're against fascism and this and that, but they'll buy Chinese products, or even these celebrities will literally go to China and take a paycheck. But then they'll go back to America and they'll complain about, say, something like racism, where the racism in China is through the roof. I mean, it's an ethno state. So I don't mind. I mean, if the celebrities go to China and they want to get money, but then again, what values do we have anymore to look at these celebrities? Meaning they're just doing it for the money. They're fake. Our politicians are fake. I even look at Americans as fake now. So it's really just about the money. But if you're into fascism and nationalism, then yeah, then it would make sense to support China or go there and do business with them. But our corporations, that's what I'm saying, our corporations have been doing business with this communist fascist country for decades. They don't care. Meaning the value system in China is not the value system in America. Why are Americans buying these products? Why are our corporations doing direct business with it? Because we don't really have any values. As long as it makes economic sense, that's fine. That's our values. It really is about money. China's different. You want to get here's a great example. Insult the Chinese government, insult the Chinese people, do something. They will break off economic time. They will take the economic hit in terms of lower profits to uphold their whatever their culture, their standards, their face, as they call mianza. Americans, I don't think we would. It's just we really just care about the money. But anyway, this is this year's the Shini and Kuai La. Again, singing these people are getting paid a lot of money from the Chinese government to entertain the Chinese people. These celebrities don't care, but then they'll go back to America. They'll complain about racism. This woman, I don't know. Again, a lot of these are European and Americans or Canadians, whatever. This woman will probably go back to the West and complain about the patriarchy, and she's fighting for feminism. Yet she's getting paid in China, a country that no feminism allowed there. But you see what I'm saying? Meaning I actually find the Chinese in some ways to be less fake than Americans, just because in America it really is so much about the money that we really don't have values anymore. This is the Chinese New Year, the party. I don't even know who these guys are. I think they're like the famous bands in America. Yeah, that's the value system. Let's go here, though. This is
let your fiscal deficits and your dollar come to grief.
okay. So this person is the former prime minister of Singapore. Pretty interesting. This is a lot what China tried to mimic off, and sometimes successfully. Singapore, as you know, well, one of the reasons Singapore is so successful, it's a city state. It's not that big. I think about 6 million people live in Singapore. But anyway, China models, and it's a Chinese state. It's also an ethno state. As much as they say it's multicultural, it's not. It's Chinese. But anyway, but it's successful. You could say without a doubt, it's one of the most richest places on earth. But anyway, they're talking about the downfall of America, and they're talking a lot about economics. No surprise there.
If it comes to grief in the short term, and there's a run on the dollar for whatever reason, because your deficits are too big and
obviously you can see this is data in 2009. This person's deceased yet, but the predictions stand the same. He's talking about basically the American empire's coming to a close.
Financial community, the bankers and all the hedge funds and everybody come to a conclusion that you're not going to tackle these deficits, and they begin to move their assets out. That's real trouble.
And there is a risk of that perception today.
Absolutely.
And I think if you remember, this guy, Charlie Rose, got fired for sexual harassment. You know, this is America. It's interesting. And I'm sure Charlie Rose would be defending women's rights before he got fired. But again, what you'll find is if you really looked at our value, either way, our system, it doesn't matter what values you think America stands for, it's a falling empire. So it's over. It's going to be over. The good, the bad, the ugly, it's going to fall.
In 2013, Lee Kuan Yew issued his final warning about America's fiscal trajectory that few took seriously, stating, "Spending is going in the wrong direction. Social Security and Medicare costs will become unbearable within 30 years if nothing is done to reform the current regime. If American leaders choose to sit on their hands indefinitely, confidence in the US dollar will eventually collapse." But just 13 years later, Lee's prophecy is coming true. US national debt continues to...
And even look at Donald Trump. What is he doing? As much as I like him, I think the prophecy is going that way. Meaning he's not really helping our fiscal deficit. He's spending like a madman as well.
...to reach record highs, recently hitting a staggering $38.5 trillion. Additionally, the US dollar's share of global reserves has plunged from 72% in the early 2000s to just under 57% today.
So the Chinese yuan, though, is rising. It's not to the level of anywhere overtaking the US dollar. But you do see the US dollar, would be holding shares with the national banks or the world banks around. And that is the US dollar's amounts of holding is decreasing. The Chinese yuan is increasing. But what's the big one? It's gold. Gold is the one, the safe bet everyone's going to.
With central banks scrambling for gold at rates not seen since the 1960s, signaling a fundamental loss of confidence in the US. And as the dollar's foundation cracks, nations are quickly building a future where Washington is no longer the middleman. Last week, India, a nation notoriously allergic to free trade, shattered a 20-year stalemate to sign a historic pact with the EU. In the digital space, a coalition of central banks, including China and Saudi Arabia, have developed mBridge, a blockchain-based platform designed to bypass the dollar entirely. And even
so, this is part of the BRICS. Again, this is nothing evil at all. These countries want to be sovereign. You want to be sovereign. We don't even feel like sometimes we have a sovereign country ourselves. But these countries know if they are not independent from the US dollar, in transactions, these would be monetary financial transactions around the world, then they're not going to be a sovereign country. And so that's why this is not an attack on America. This is just a push to become an independent sovereign country where they don't have to rely on the US dollar. It's a normal move.
Singapore is quietly insulating itself, locking in massive trade deals with South America, regions Lee once considered too distant to prioritize. But perhaps most tellingly, even America's closest partners are beginning to distance themselves.
We are in the midst of a rupture. Great powers have begun using economic integration as weapons. Tariffs as leverage, financial infrastructure as coercion, supply chains as vulnerabilities to be exploited. Now, Canada was amongst the first to hear the wake-up call, leading us to fundamentally shift our strategic posture. Canadians know that our old, comfortable assumptions that our geography and alliance memberships automatically conferred prosperity and security, that assumption is no longer valid.
This is the story of how Lee Kuan Yew foresaw the dollar's decline and the erosion of American power, decades in the making.
But you cannot build up enormous deficits that allows all the and do nothing about it, and people say, "Oh, well, this is hopeless."
Yeah. There's always a treasury. There's always a Federal Reserve. They'll make more money.
Yeah, I don't want to go so much on Singapore, but we'll do another video if you're interested. Singapore, believe it or not, that's the country that my passport is permanently denied to. Thanks to the FBI. I appreciate that, FBI, who are cowards. But anyway, Singapore, in some ways, it's an ethno-state, though. Talk about racist. It is an ethno-state. But in some ways, and it's also small, meaning it's easy to manage. When it's a city-state of 6 million, it's not like big China or big America. But in some ways, I had a buddy from Australia who lives there, and he's like, in some ways, it's sort of like a socialist utopia. I know we don't like those words, but they could get away with it for a lot of ones, like I said. And oh, by the way, again, we'll do another video on Singapore. But also the levels of freedom aren't as much as you think. Singapore is extremely rich. It is extremely developed, but there are a lot of rules and freedom, and it's not free speech is what you think. So they've given their people really good lives. It's rated as probably one of the most expensive places in the world to live. I think it's like number 2 as most expensive, meaning it is extremely developed, hospitals, everything. But it has that socialist mentality, which in some ways is good. I'm okay with it. But don't fool yourself. They don't have the freedoms that they have in America. But then again, what the hell freedoms we have anyway? It's falling apart. But that's another talk. But anyway, Singapore has risen to be truly a world-class city-state.
Yeah.
No, can't do that.
They just print more money.
They will print more money. Exactly. Yeah. There's a difference. Yeah. So the deficits, the looming deficit of the United States is what worries you the most because it will strike at the heart of the U.S. global leadership.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
To understand why Lee never fully trusted any fiat currency, we need to go back to where it all began. In 1942, when Singapore fell to Japanese forces, the occupiers immediately issued their own currency, known as banana money. But to fund the war, they made the fatal mistake every struggling empire makes. They printed and printed and printed. The result? Textbook hyperinflation. A bag of rice that cost $5 in the morning could cost $50 by evening. This wasn't just economic theory. This was real-time monetary collapse affecting everyone's daily survival. A young Lee, watching this unfold in real time, learns the most important economic lesson of his life. Fiat currency is only as good as the institution backing it, and when that institution is reckless, paper money becomes exactly what it is, worthless paper. Decades later, Lee documented his experience with hyperinflation with haunting clarity, stating, "I knew that the moment I had cash, the important thing was to change it into something of more permanent value or it would melt away in my hands." In this mad urge to convert banana notes into assets, I bought myself a full-size billiard table.
The reason why we're focusing a lot on Singapore is similar to me. Singapore is an interesting bridge where from China to America, or just like me, like an American who lived in China. But if you're really looking, because China is definitely very foreign and it's hard to understand to Americans. So they look at Singapore as the bridge into Asia. So the Singaporeans, the way they talk, I mean, obviously they're fluent in English. It just gives you a good opportunity to the point of they also know America very well, and they're also of Chinese origin. And so they have that bridge to really understand what's happening in both sides of the world, the East and the West.
It restored and revarnished. The next most desirable asset was jewelry. Lee watched fortunes evaporate overnight. He watched people who trusted paper money lose everything. He watched those who converted to real assets survive. He noted that gold was particularly valuable, even more so than property, as you could easily transport it during times of crisis, stating, "1 ounce of gold, regardless of hyperinflation, you could feed a family for a month, as well as buy medicine and other essentials." Over the millennia, historical experience of devastation and famine caused by drought, floods, wars, and other calamities had taught the Chinese people the value of gold, indestructible, immutable.
And I say that again, when I grew up in New York, I never really looked upon gold, whether my family, my neighbors, or even society. The only gold that I saw would be jewelry, somebody buying a gold necklace, something like that. But when I went to China in 2010, you just see it. I mean, gold is used as a store of value. I mean, families are buying gold, coins and bars and saving it. It's on a different level than it is in America. And I think as Americans, we trust the dollar, or we'll invest in the stock market, or we'll invest in our house, something like that. But in China, investing in gold as a secure source of wealth is at a much higher level in terms of just their society than what I ever remember in America. And guess what? It's going to pay big dividends in the future. Because why? Because the US dollar is going to sink, and those who have gold are going to be in very good hands.
And fungible. Fast forward to today, and the world's central banks are proving Lee right. For the first time in 3 decades, central banks hold more gold than US debt, signaling the collapse in trust in paper money. The financial principles Lee forged under the Japanese occupation has never been more relevant. In fact, the Singapore dollar is a testament to Lee's approach to economic management, having consistently appreciated against the US dollar since the 1970s, a rare achievement matched only by the Swiss franc. But when Lee was building Singapore, he recognized troubling parallels in America to the monetary mismanagement he'd witnessed decades earlier. The mechanism was different, the timeline was longer, but the underlying mathematics were concerning.
You and I talked about America's deficit and debt problems, and its seeming political dysfunction to do anything about it.
I still am. I still am worried. The leaders think they can tweak the problem without paying. And they're afraid to tell the people, look, we've got to do this. We've got to make these cuts. And over the period of X number of years, 5, 6, 7, our deficits will go. That's the only way. Otherwise it keeps on growing and your interest rates burden will grow with it.
Today, US national debt continues to reach record highs, hitting a staggering $38.5 trillion, with interest payments alone costing more than the entire US military budget. You see, Lee understood that in a democracy, fiscal discipline is a political liability. When leaders have to compete for popularity, they lose the ability to say no. Slashing the trillions required from Social Security, healthcare, and defense would be political suicide.
I just don't think it is. The only thing I could think of is maybe, and this is where the crypto push is in America, because if we even revalue our US dollar to gold by ourselves, I just don't think it's possible. I have no, well, I'm not going to say I, but I have probably belief that the Trump administration, which is very pro-crypto, we all know that, he's a very pro-crypto, and I'm also pro-crypto. I'm not saying I'm against crypto, but we all know that something needs to be done at a monumental level to save the US dollar, some type of transition. Are we going to go back to the gold standards? Maybe. I mean, you're talking gold. Gold may go up to $50,000 an ounce. It's possible. What's going to happen to American citizens? I think there could be something where we're going to digitalize this in terms of cryptocurrency. Something is going to happen. We all know it, and we've known this for decades now, this printing. And Donald Trump came along, and he really hasn't done much difference than all the other prior presidents, and that is print. I mean, he wants to continue to increase the budget. So we all know, anyone with common sense knows that sooner or later, this is not feasible. What's going to happen? And you're seeing that. I see that all with currencies abroad, how currencies are rising. Now, Donald Trump said he wants a weaker dollar to do better business. We'll see how this goes. But I go back. I think the empire, like history predicts, this is not going to work.
Side. Instead, leaders choose the path of least resistance. They keep the system on life support by printing more money, triggering inflation that eats your future from the inside out.
You believe if we do not do something about it, we become an
indebted country.
We're already an indebted country.
Become more indebted, and eventually you have inflation. You are indebted in a different way from other countries. Other countries borrow US dollars or pounds or euro, and they got to pay back. You owe yourself US dollars. So you're under no pressure to pay back, but you're under pressure from such a huge amount of currency floating around that you get inflation.
But the story doesn't end there. Because the dollar is the world's reserve currency, America is also effectively exporting its inflation to everyone else, effectively forcing the rest of the world to pay for its $38 trillion debt. Nations are sick of holding a currency.
Yeah, and so this is what's happening. More and more nations do not want to be dependent on US dollars. Obviously, everyone, the reason we could print money out of thin air is because it's the world reserve currency. And countries before, they're basically forced to use it. But when countries are no longer forced to use the US dollar because they have other options now, what's going to happen? I think you're going to see inflation like you've never seen before. And then when that happens, that's when I'm going to see something of gold or crypto come in. But something's going to happen. We all know this.
That loses value by design. To them, the dollar isn't a safe haven anymore, it's a leaking bucket. But as they look for the exit, Lee predicted that the transition away from dollar dominance wouldn't be smooth. In his final published book, he wrote something chilling. Any change in reserve currency will probably be marked by at least a brief period of confusion, even if, and this is a big if, the question is settled amicably among the leaders of all the major economies. Today, as Lee suspected, the transition is anything but amicable. For decades, the world mostly accepted American hegemony and the stability the dollar provided.
Yeah, like I said, when I think of the biggest threat of the world, it would be America for two reasons. One, we all know. I mean, who's starting wars for the last decades? It's America. The last war that China was in, for instance, was in Vietnam. So that's number one. Number two is when global superpowers like American history, when they decline, they don't go down softly. They go down with a fight. So this is what Lee Kuan Yew is hinting at, and that is when there's a great power change, when the global economy changes, you think this is going to be peaceful and shake hands? I mean, look at Donald Trump. Even what Donald Trump is doing with Europe, and everyone knows my opinion of NATO. And I think that's where Marco Rubio, if you saw it, he went to the Munich Security Conference, and he gave a much more appeasing speech to say, hey, come on, let's work together. We're still brothers in arms, but something like that. Why? Because I'm telling you, it's a big rift. And what is that also hurting? The US dollar, where the European Union, the euro. So sort of like this Trump, we're gonna do everything ourselves and take on. We'll see where it goes. But I'm telling you, through globalism, and America has braced globalism, we have made other countries more powerful. And when these countries became more powerful, one of the things they want to do is they want to stop having America as their boss. So this change that Lee Kuan Yew's talking about, it's happening. It's happening before our eyes. But we all know that there's going to be something like a switch. Like I keep saying, it's like the train is going down the tracks and it's rumbling. And we all know something bad is going to happen. This train is going to derail. We don't know quite when, and we don't know how much damage. But we do know that this train is going to derail. Like this American system is going to collapse. Is it going to be a peaceful collapse, a violent collapse? How's this going to be? And like I said, this is all part of history too. These things always happen, and they're usually linked to economics. And this US dollar is continuing to decline. Even American citizens now are grabbing more gold. Why? If you're an American citizen and you have a lot of belief in the US dollar, why would gold be rising? Because Americans are realizing themselves their faith in the US dollar has been dropping now.
But this all changed in 2022 when the US weaponized the global financial system. When the US froze $300 billion in Russian reserves, it signaled that the dollar was no longer a neutral utility, but a political tool. It shattered the illusion of a secure global system and turned what had been a slow crawl into a frantic global sprint for the exits. Central banks around the world went on an unprecedented gold buying spree. In 2022 alone, they purchased over 1,000 tons, the highest annual total in 55 years. They bought another 1,037 tons in 2023. Today, they're accumulating gold at roughly 60 tons per month, more than triple the pre-2022 average. Meanwhile, countries began restructuring trade relationships to bypass the dollar entirely. In 2014, over 90% of Russia and China's trade was settled in US dollars, but today, a staggering 99.1% of their trade is settled in their...
That is crazy. I still cannot believe the amount of change that's happening. It has a lot to do with the Russian-Ukrainian war, but this trend is not going to go back, though. This trend is going to continue to go away from the US dollars. I don't think Americans realize what's going to happen, and I don't think Americans care unless it happens in front of their face. I mean, we all procrastinate, we don't care until it affects us in a real day, real life scenario, but it's going to happen.
Their own currencies. Saudi Arabia, America's most reliable Middle East ally for half a century, recently started accepting Chinese yuan for oil sales, fracturing the petrodollar system that had anchored dollar dominance since the 1970s. And new infrastructure has emerged. Project M-Bridge, a collaboration between the central banks of China, Thailand, the UAE, and Saudi Arabia, hit full stride in late...
Yeah, it's pretty interesting. One of the hubs for this is actually in Hong Kong. But again, it all goes to the same thing like the BRICS unit currency, and that is they want to be able to bypass international financial transactions without going through the US dollars. There's nothing, for lack of a better word, there's nothing evil about this. They just want to become independent. It makes perfect sense.
Late 2024. By early 2026, it has already processed over $55 billion in trade, allowing countries to settle payments in seconds without needing US dollars or banks as middlemen. But while the dollar's dominance declines, many assume that the Chinese yuan will simply replace it as the world's reserve currency.
So I haven't seen this whole video, but I'm telling you, I don't believe I've said many times, because your currency status and your country status go hand in hand, meaning America was and still is the world superpower. Hence, the US dollar is the world's reserve currency. They go hand in hand. What did I say? I don't believe China is going to become the world superpower. It's just not in them. If you understand the dynamics and the history now, China will become a regional power. So what did I say about the Chinese yuan? The Chinese yuan's rising. It's been rising more and more, and it will be much more of a legitimate international currency where banks could have, even you as an American citizen traveling around, just like you want to have dollars, maybe you want to have euros. But the Chinese yuan, I don't believe will ever become the world's reserve currency, for the same reason I don't believe China will ever become the global superpower. But both China and the Chinese yuan will increase in status, and America will decrease in status, and we're going to have some type of multipolar world. It's very interesting. Again, with leadership, it's great to have the historians to kind of go back to the last time this was this type of world, maybe before World War I, something like that. How long will this multipolar world last before there's a World War III and a new order? There's a lot of questions, but we know that the global order of the world is changing. America is going down. Other countries are rising. It is what it is. After that, we'll just see. But the global order is changing.
But Lee was famously skeptical of this narrative, at least in the short term. You see, China maintains significant capital controls over its currency. You cannot easily move large sums in and out of China without government approval, and this limitation is why it represents only 2.5% of global reserve holdings today. So instead of China taking the throne, Lee predicted a multipolar currency system. As far back as 1999, he laid out the map. Given the size of the Chinese economy, by 2050, the renminbi is likely to be a major international currency, floating freely.
Yeah, so I definitely would agree with all this.
Freely against the other three major currencies, the US dollar, the euro, and the yen. The world's trade and reserve holders.
So hopefully there's no misunderstanding between the two yen and yuan. There's the Japanese yen, and then there's the Chinese yuan, or it's some people call it the renminbi, either one. So yen is Japanese, which again, the Japanese yen is a viable international currency that you may hold. The Chinese yuan will also take that place on stage of a legitimate multi-currency world.
Will be dominated by these four currencies. And now, recent developments suggest this multipolar vision is materializing. In 2025, China settled nearly 40% of its $6.5 trillion in foreign trade using the yuan, a record number, up from around 26% just 2 years earlier. And the ambition is only growing. President Xi Jinping recently renewed his call to build China as a financial powerhouse, specifically demanding a strong currency that can act as a global reserve. So, what of America's future? Despite his repeated warnings about fiscal decay, Lee never made the mistake of betting against America. He remained a pragmatic optimist, believing that the US, like so many times before, would find its way out of the storm. Even regarding its staggering national debt, he wrote, "The problem is worrying, but I do not see it as intractable. Both sides know that the nation will be hobbled without a solution and may even go into decline. At some point, therefore, there will be a breakthrough."
Are you confident that the United States will do something about its deficit, which is at $1.3 trillion for the last?
Well, if I'm not confident, and I have no hope of that, I wouldn't be here. Simple as that.
But while Lee believed in American resilience, the math has become merciless. With the national debt surging by over $8 billion every single day and the world building a future without the dollar, the question remains, is it too late?
Okay, we're going to do one quick video about China, very fast, like 5 minutes. Before we do it, we're going to do leadership about what was just said. So the point about people saying, don't bet against America. America will still figure out a way, this and that. I get it. But America is a very violent country, and we've used violence to solve many of our questions or problems. So anyway, picture a scenario where you're America, you walk into a room as a person, you're America, and all these other countries say, you owe us money. You owe everyone money. And then you tell all the people in the room, there's Canada, like all these people, they represent their own banks or countries, and you say, yeah, you're right. But I'm the only guy in this room with a gun, which means I can kill every single one in this room. So now my debt is forgiven, or I'm going to kill you. Meaning using military force weapons as a way to solve our economic problems. I mean, look at Venezuela. I mean, you don't think there's economic or Greenland? So with that said, you don't think other countries also realize, same thing how Donald Trump is now looking at international law as there's no international law and we'll do whatever violence. What do you think these countries need to do? It doesn't matter how strong their economy is. If they don't have a strong military to back it, you don't think that America now will do whatever we've got to do militarily to take whatever we have to do? So again, take that with this.
Clear posture. According to estimates by U.S. Department of War, China had more than 600. China is rapidly expanding its nuclear arsenal. It is reviving secret facilities, ramping up warhead production, and taking a more offensive nuclear posture. According to estimates by U.S. Department of War, China had more than 600 nuclear warheads by the end of 2024 and is on a track to have 1,000 nuclear warheads by 2030. This is far less than what the U.S. has, but the move threatens efforts to revive global arms controls. The development is concerning the West, especially.
So we're trying to get it to where you understand that China knows they could build their economy as much as they want, but if they don't have the military to back it, who's going to say America is not going to come in there and invade it? And people say, we would never do that. America, we have principles and there's international law. And we really, do you think? Do you really do? So these other countries know the world is changing. And truth be told, international law is very murky. It could be argued there's none. So the only thing you have left is you have a strong economy. You better have a strong military to back yourself. Because I do believe America, if it came down to invading and stealing other countries' resources or allowing America to collapse, I think, of course, we're going to invade other countries. We're not like literally, you're even a typical American, I think, would say, go for it. It's like, listen, we have two choices. Either America's going to collapse, our dollars, or we could just invade other countries and steal their resources. I even think the American public would be like, yeah, let's do it. Then that's fine. I mean, it's got pros and cons with that, very Machiavellian philosophy. But then why wouldn't you be surprised that these other countries are building up their military because they know that once they get the gold, if they can't protect it, we're probably going to steal it as Americans. It's just the way it is. But of course, China's building up their military.
When the last remaining nuclear arms treaty between Russia and the United States expired, U.S. wants China to join nuclear arms treaty along with Russia.
The president's been clear in the past that in order to have true arms control.
I mean, like I said, I go back to this. I don't know, and there are Trump MAGA people that are just morons. I should show you some of the stupid things they say on Twitter, where they just follow Trump, whatever, just like the ICE, the shooting of that guy Preddy or whatever his name, bad shot, people, bad shot. But these Trump people, what Trump did to Greenland is borderline retarded. Again, it's apples and oranges. What's happening with NATO is a raw deal for America. But what we did for Greenland, not good. So now you got Marco Rubio, who's trying to mend bridges. What I'm trying to say is, even when Trump makes mistakes, and we all make mistakes, these Trump cultist people, they're just like, no, I mean, they're just still mind washing. We joke about the Chinese communists as being brainwashed. But I could tell you, this whole deal about protecting America, we're going to need allies. But that whole deal that happened in Greenland, that was a dumb thing to do. It's just going to piss off the Europeans. It's just not what we do. We should have just focused on getting out of NATO, at least financially responsible for NATO, make the Europeans pay for it. But Greenland, that's apples and oranges. We're going to take that land too? All right, we'll see where that goes.
In the 21st century, it's impossible to do something that doesn't include China because of their vast and rapidly growing stockpile.
But Beijing has so far refused to join. China's foreign ministry spokesperson says China's nuclear capacity is nothing compared to that of the United States and Russia.
China's nuclear capabilities are of a totally different scale as those of the United States and Russia, and will not participate in nuclear disarmament negotiations at this.
There are two key nuclear sites where China is building additional infrastructure. Both are located in Sichuan province. One of them is located near the city of Pingtong. This is believed to be China's only plutonium pit production facility, the heart of a nuclear warhead. Another critical site is in Zhejiang County. This complex is believed to produce the high explosive components that trigger a nuclear blast. For decades, Beijing maintained a policy of delayed retaliation, launching only after absorbing an attack. The Pentagon says this policy is shifting. China has deployed early warning satellites, long-range radars, and rapid command systems capable of launching missiles within.
I think everyone could agree, too. This world is changing. You don't think a World War III could be coming? You don't think a nuclear war is going to be coming? It's part of human nature. Well, you could see it. It's very much in the cards that this could happen.
Minutes.
All right. All right, so let me end it here. So again, this is the year of the horse. I don't know. I think many Americans don't even know what I'm talking about. So again, just like in America, you have zodiac signs, or we have in America, whatever, the Taurus, the Leo, and all this stuff. And it's basically by month of your birth. In China, it's by year. So if you were born this year, and it happens every 12 years, there's 12 animals. Just like we have 12 zodiac signs, they have 12 animals. This is the year of the horse. This is called Trinjie, which is the spring festival, which is based on the lunar calendar. And it's a big deal in China. And China realized they are growing, and they realize, much like America, I mean, they study from America, that to be a greater power, you have to be economic and you have to be militarily at the same time. We in America, we are declining. Do you think so? And I'd say one of the things is just ask yourself, how are we treating other Americans? We don't even know who an American is anymore. And I'll do another video about a Chinese girl in America. I mean, what she gets away with in America, never would get away with in China. But this is what we have. And I really think that, again, and more Americans are leaving America, and that is, I just don't see how you're going to slice and dice this. And that is, some things it's just destined by history. It's the same thing if you're trying to say you want to become immortal. Eventually, we as human beings, we reach a certain age, whatever, maybe 100 years old for some people, and we die. It just is what it is. It's the same thing with history in terms of civilizations and countries. We've hit 250 years old. We're at the prime time for the empire to fall. You don't feel it happening? I do. It's going around. So it's the same thing. David, what should we do? I've said many times, I really think there's only three things you could do. One, leave America. It's happening more and more. Two, get somewhere you're off the grid in America where you don't have to rely on electricity and you're more in a rural area. Maybe even go to Canada, Montana, Wyoming, something like a rural state where you're self-sufficient, and you're going to see this movie play out before you. Or if you are into politics, I just think that the federal level, it's over. You're going to have to go to state politics, some type of secession. And we Americans know it too. We don't care about other states. Meaning, at the end of the day, if I gave you two choices, either 50 states, we stay together in this dysfunctional, declining family called America, or we split and there's 2 to 3 states and they're just going to kick ass and take names. I think most Americans are like, I want to be part of that. I'm done. It's like, well, what about your brothers and sisters from all these other states? Don't care. I mean, don't you care about people from California? Don't really care. I mean, it just is what it is. We have to admit it. We've turned into 350 million people of just diversity of, we don't really recognize each other. I don't. As a military veteran, I would never, there's no way I would serve in the American military to die for America. What is America? I don't know what American citizens are. So those are the three options you're going to see. And it's happening. More and more Americans are leaving America, number one. Two, more and more Americans are waiting for, World War III, the collapse, Armageddon, where they're becoming more self-reliant. Usually they're going into rural areas. Even I'll do a video on the rich people buying their multi-billion dollar bunkers. So the second is you're just preparing to get some type of off the grid and just survive on your own. And then the third, I would say, is this: you're seeing a rise in militias and sort of a sense of just dissatisfaction of Washington, D.C., that these future politics, it's not going to happen. And you're looking at state politics like state secession. Anyone got any better ideas? Well, think about it. We'll see. But I can tell you, it's going down. China, I think a lot of people get pissed off in China because, I don't know, it's sort of like, for lack of a better term, it's maybe you broke up with your girlfriend and maybe your girlfriend's doing better or your ex-boyfriend's doing better and there's jealousy. China's just doing what they're doing. All countries want to do it. You think India is any different? No. Russia, all these countries are going to do the same thing. And again, America's decline is 100% our fault as Americans. Our fault. China has never betrayed us. Never. Our government has betrayed us. Our politicians have betrayed. And yes, the good old American people. What did I say? My time in China, I don't see that much difference from the Chinese government and the Chinese people. Well, I can look at that in America too. I don't see that there's this evil American government and the good old American people. I think American people will sell you out in a heartbeat. I mean, the comments that I've received as an American military veteran from these good old hardworking American people. So it just is what it is. We have built this nest ourselves in America. We are truly only to blame. We've only betrayed ourselves. No one else has done. And maybe this is just part of history. I mean, it happens all the time. But either way, China is an interesting country to keep on the lookout because it won't be the new global superpower. But I do predict it is going to be much more of an influential regional, or you could say a world power, one of many world powers. And it just is what it is. David Baumblatt from Terabit Leadership, I appreciate your support. Lead to victory.